So really my session tonight to conclude the event is to talk about, I suppose, 10 tips, or if you look at it a different way, 10 warnings, that if you really want to achieve meaningful change and without too much pain, just bear in mind the top 10 tips and how you might therefore move more smoothly. But before I just run into those top 10, I probably need to give you some perspective in terms of where I'm coming from in all of this. So we've heard during the event about recent prize winners in the different categories to do with the survey, and also some of the fascinating developments from the speakers and their companies. A lot of hard work, thought, commitment will have been necessary to achieve what we've all heard about from the different companies and the different speakers, as well as considerable buy-in. And the buy-in doesn't come by accident in any organisation. But ahead of all of that, somebody at some point made the very brave decision to go for it. Whatever it is that they were trying to achieve with a new strategy, bringing about change, somebody has actually pushed the go button and said, let's get on with this. But all too often, those decisions from a leadership team actually fail to lead to the desired end result. They don't get the degree of change hoped for. They don't get the performance improvements or the different behaviour within the organisation that they desired. And the reasons actually generally are not too surprising. Worse than that, usually they could have been avoided. And that I think is common across all of the projects is change rarely occurs without a really big push, a concerted effort, and the attention to detail. So my 10 tips or warnings, and you'll see what I mean by that as I run through them. What works, what doesn't. Number one, when you embark on any sort of new strategy, change of thinking, and you want to change the direction or the approach that your organisation has, it has to be led with an awareness of others. It's pretty pointless if it's just the same old folks inside the business having a chat, deciding what they think they should try and do and getting on with it. If you're in ignorance of actually what best practice is externally, and you don't have any benchmarks from people outside of your organisation that are actually achieving meaningful change, you really won't have the right view of what practices you should be emulating. So number one, you need those external benchmarks. Things that we've been hearing about all night during this event with Echo. Number two, realism. Realism in terms of aspirations. The businesses I've seen that have succeeded in really changing their behaviours, their markets, and everything actually, they've done it step by step. They haven't tried to change the whole world in one go. So they've been realistic in terms of what is achievable in a certain period of time. Linked to that, my third tip is deciding the scale. Select one business unit. So if you're a multinational, select one location. If you operate in numerous brands, maybe you work with one of your brands first. Don't try and do everything in one go. It just doesn't work. The organisation will grind to a halt. You can't afford for a strategy process and the desire to change things to bring your organisation to a standstill. You've got to keep shareholders happy. You've got to keep the pundits in the media on side. You've got to keep the lights on, so you still need the revenue coming in. So you can't risk bringing everything to a complete halt just because somebody's had an idea to create a new strategy. So third tip is decide on the scale and be sensible. Fourth tip, identify an area to champion. So as you're choosing where to start, actually in all organisations we have groups of people, whether it's a business unit, whether it's a product area, whether it's a brand, whether it's a function, that we know are quite malleable, they're open to change, they're open-minded, they're up for it, they're up for a challenge. So you want to persuade the others who are not necessarily up for a challenge that they need to change. So one of the best tricks is to identify an easy win. Work with a group of people in an area that you know are going to be on side, prepared to give things a go, likely to do something brave and innovative, that therefore puts a marker in the sand for the other business units or the other teams or the other brands, the other locations in your organisation. Some internal rivalry, yeah, there's a part of that, but actually it's just common sense. If you're going to set off a new strategy, a new scheme, a new process, you need to see that it works quickly. So start with an area of the business that's likely to be the case. Fifth tip is alignment. Your change strategy must align to a number of forces. Financial and performance is one. You can't afford to spoil your existing success stories. Don't meddle for the sake of meddling. Be aware of where you currently are being financially successful. Be aware of your cash cows. Be aware of where the revenue streams are that fundamentally keep you operating and keep the lights burning. Don't risk them. Second alignment, capabilities. You've got to be realistic. You need to be honest about the strengths and your capabilities that you can leverage. There's no point pretending that you're great at things that you're not. Similarly, you've got to be open and honest about your weaknesses and failings. And as part of your new strategy, you aim to remedy those. But if you're not prepared to talk openly about them, the strategy is doomed to failure. Play to the market's dynamics and trends. Nick talked about this in his session. It's really important. As you're developing your new strategy, your change that you want to make happen, in a way you're trying to future-proof it. You don't want to have to redo this in 6 months and then 12 months. You don't want to have to do it all again too soon. And other alignment, you need to be in tune to your culture, your ethos, your behaviours. There are good things in most organisations and there are terrible behaviours. Be open about the bad behaviours. Understand the things that you're going to have to face as potential blockers and work with them, not ignoring them. Sixth tip, before you actually go ahead with a strategy and start communicating it across the business, you've got to agree on what good looks like. What is the outcome that you are desiring from this new strategy? Be really clear about what good looks like. That has to be part of the messaging so that everybody gets what they're trying to bring about, how it's going to help the overall organisation's performance, but actually locally too. And then the seventh tip, only at this point should you be focusing on the who, how, when you're going to create change, the strategy process. Really key to that who, how, when, the who. Who are the owners going to be for this work that you're now going to put in play? This creating a new vision, a new strategy, a new plan, a new process. Who are the owners? Who are the powerhouses going to be that will actually really drive the pace? In every organisation, and I don't mean this rudely, but there are lots of plodders. and they do a really important job usually at keeping things going. They're an important cog in the machine. But when you're actually thinking about new strategy and a vision and creating a, 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 a business for the future, you need to involve some of the movers and shakers that you do have in the organisation, and maybe pull in a few people from your partner organisations and suppliers, agencies, bankers, and so on, who also can give that kind of thrust. Eighth tip is when embarking on any strategy creation change program, you do actually need a process. I know that sounds boring, but otherwise it's just mayhem. There's going to be a phase of reflection based on analysis, homework. Once you've actually done your homework and your analysis, you're going to create options, and you have to sift through those options. There's going to be a strategizing phase. And then once you've decided on which of those options to pursue, you then need to get to the point where you translate that vision into detailed programs, go-to-market programs. So there needs to be that simple process in some form mapped out of analysis, strategizing, and then the planning for the programs and the execution of the strategy. But in my experience, to be successful in bringing about significant change in an organization, you need a nag. You need a partner in crime, a conscience, somebody who's going to push you, reassure you, sense check you. I remember the MD of Tilda, the rice business, once introducing me to the senior partner in Ogilvy, the then agency, as their strategy nag. And I kind of thought, do I nag them? In your own ranks is really good at that, but use them, and use them right through the process. And the last tip or warning, number 10, it doesn't stop once you've got the strategy. Once you've got your strategy and you've agreed that, hey, that's what we want to try and be, and we want to achieve X, Y, Z by such and such a date, unless you go into the actual detail of road mapping the execution plan, looking at the likely blockers that are going to mess up that plan, and then working out what you've got to put in place as a leadership team to facilitate the effective, smooth execution of that plan, the strategy is meaningless. It does not stop with the strategy. Strategizing is right through to the road plan of what's going to happen, when, who's going to do it, how are they going to do it, how do you know that they're doing it, what are you going to measure to show that they are actually achieving it. So if you don't like where you are right now as an organization, or you think there's somebody out there that is doing some really smart work that you want to emulate, go for it, change things. But do so with a really clear plan, a very clearly thought through process, the right level of support, and realism in terms of timeframes and scale. And then enjoy the plaudits, as we've seen have been given to a number of the speakers during this event. Be successful, and I wish you luck.